From Broadway stages to a 2-year battle with immobility, today's guest, what it's meant to hit rock bottom and come back with something deeper. That's what she knows all about. When a client passed away, Heather-Ann didn't just grieve, she investigated. What she discovered about water, about trauma, about emotional healing has since transformed hundreds of lives. From strep recovery to hormonal rebalancing, from grief release to cancer remission, her story and science may challenge every single thing you thought you knew about wellness and what's really blocking it. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all.
Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast.
Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast, the space where those in survival mode break free from pain, fatigue, bloating, and hormone chaos, and they finally reclaim their energy, rhythm, and natural way. Y'all, welcome to the Good Vibes Studio, Heather-Ann.
Oh my goodness, I love your energy. And I just have to say, the tap masters that I used to work with back in the days in New York City, love you too, from the angelic realms.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So Heather, take us back to the moment that changed everything. What was going on in your life when you began to realize that water, trauma, and women's health might be more connected than we've ever been told?
Well, having been trained as a professional dancer, moved back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in my mid-30s. And I was just coming back to get closer to the family, to sort of visit why I left in the first place, was childhood abuse, running away from those memories I didn't want to really deal with. And I really fell into the healing arts, water education, and trauma. I never planned on going down that path or becoming an expert. It's just that as I started to, what actually happened is I was meditating a lot. Okay. So I had already been a yoga certification. I was meditating a lot. And one night I woke up, and this is in my book series coming up. I woke up and I heard the word Reiki energy. You have to remember, I grew up in a blue collar family system. We never heard any of these terminologies. We didn't know about yoga, shamanism, healing, nothing, none of that. Severe generational from both parents, childhood abuse. So, but I heard it. And at 3 a.m., I went online and immediately this woman popped up and she caught my attention. I read her bio. She had been a psychotherapist for 30 years in a lockdown facility with teenage girls. So she had an interesting education. She found that the talking wasn't working at all. And back then, this is like, I'm going to give my age away, but we're talking like 20 years ago. So, and she was 30 years older than me. So back then, nobody was studying Reiki or energy work. Like that just was not heard of. She asked her boss if she could study it. He said, on your own time with your own money. So she did. And she started using that and found a door opening with their energy and their emotions. They were starting to let down their guard. She left her job and started a private practice, which is admirable. She became my first teacher, and she was really masterful. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of different levels that people are good at. And I will say she was a full-time, I would say over 5,000 student following from different states. She was the real deal. And I knew right away when I was studying it that I had done this in past life. Like the symbols, it all made sense to me. Didn't know anything about past lives. Didn't know anything about that. And me and her immediately had a deep respect for each other. She saw me as an equal master. And so I started working with her with yoga meditation. She bought the water systems, and she was actually a great pioneer in the beginning of getting the Reiki energy people involved with the water, because they would come over and try the water in my kitchen and they would feel a difference in their body immediately, which was interesting experiment for me because this was all new to me. So she was the beginning stages of sort of that sort of transition. How did the water come in? Well, that's mysterious too, because I was working with a private client at his house twice a week for 2 years. He had little tumors in the frontal cortex of his brain. He had skin cancer, but he was like an Alzheimer's-y type energy. Like they thought he had Alzheimer's at first, then they realized he had skin cancer. His wife was Eastern, she worked at a university. She loved Eastern sciences. He was Western. So they found middle bridge, and they hired me to come in to do, sort of meditations that had medical research behind them. We call them medical meditations. And so I loved working with him. He had a deep faith and a deep, beautiful energy. You walked in the room and he just lit up. We danced a lot, actually. We danced a lot. And when we would chant, the would chant with us. But I remember about 2 years in, he tried an experimental cancer treatment, and it went south. And he started to get rashes and fevers, and he was hallucinating. And it happened pretty fast, and he became a very different person, very angry. And I remember going, wow, this person is different now from this experience of these chemicals. And it really was upsetting. And for the first time, he was questioning his choices to me. And I remember we would go into the kitchen to take a break and drink tap water. And we went into the kitchen, and honest to God, he started tap dancing. And I was he didn't know I was a professional dancer and especially tap dancer, master, world record holder. He didn't know that. And he was good. I mean, he's just like hallucinating and he's tap dancing. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? So we finished the session. I call his wife at work. She's immediately picks up because she thinks something's wrong. I said, no. I said, I just want to know, does Bob tap dance? Did he ever tap dance? She said, he loves to dance, but no. And I was like, well, he just tap danced. He's really good. And she just laughed, And she asked him, days later, and he's like, I guess the great grandfather did or something. I don't know. I'd say about a week or two later, he passed away. It was devastating to me. When I went to the funeral, the children were very gracious about my work. They felt that the science and the brain protocols really helped him be able to function again, tie his shoes and be able to stay at home. And I loved him. And I wasn't expecting the next week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12 to 1, our session, to cry the whole session. And I would just cry because there was this special soul bond. I think it was the time when I was parting from my family for the first time and addressing the childhood abuse, and it didn't go well. I was, my brother and father did not react well to me, and I wasn't expecting that. Nobody prepares for that. So I felt like, oh my gosh, I've lost my family and I'm dealing with severe brain damage and childhood abuse, and here I am. And so he was kind of like a love family, like an energy of support. And so when he died, I was really angry at God. And I learned to be angry at God because that's where my mom would target her anger when things did not go right. And so I was complaining, and then I sat in meditation and I said, why does everybody have cancer? Why does the kids have cancer? I mean, this is 20 years ago. Now we know it, like 1 in 2 people in America have cancer, and we know it's in the soil. We know it's in the water. We know it's, and I got the water is bad. And I wrote it in a journal. And then the next week I got a client, and she worked for one of the companies that I work for. I work for 2 different companies. One deals with just clean water, and then one deals with medical grade, Japanese medical grade water. That was a game changer for my brain damage. I can say that, and a game changer for my clients. But one thing I will say today, as we talk about the reality of health and healing, is I'm not giving any medical advice, because if you're out there, you really need to deal with a professional. Everybody, you can have 2 diabetic clients, with two completely different ways of approaching what type of water protocol you're going to do, what type of healing protocol you're going to do. What I'm here to really talk about is how do we define clean water, and why do we have so many choices that aren't really choices? And it gets really confusing for the consumer, because I have a lot of smart clients. I would say a lot of my clients, chemists, scientists, doctors, I mean, they got degrees. I mean, they're like, and they don't know anything about water or water filters. They have no education. And then I have had construction workers, owners of construction and oil and gas, and I ask them questions. They have no education on how to shop for filters. And I think to myself, these are the two professions you would think you would ask that would have like a year education every year, because our water's changing in America, and your state regulations. And this is something that is a foundation of health. And for me, it's been a game changer.
Yeah. And first, I want to thank you for walking us through that moment, bringing in that client story to help resonate that it was more than just you who saw the different things. I love that your first real teacher was able to find a way to let the guard down for teens. And I think so many times we're expecting people to always be able to articulate and talk when they're having issues, or when they're becoming aware that what they've experienced is trauma, let alone how to then start processing the trauma, to manage the trauma, because it's such a cycle that they have to go through with that. And so to have someone be able to find a way to let the guard down, and then combine the water with that and see tremendous results. I think that was a beautiful testimony to share. But then to go into working with that private client who experienced skin cancer and tumors in the brain, and having that medical meditation and that science behind it, I kind of really want to ask, like, what does that look like, that medical meditation versus your traditional meditation that we might see, let's say on YouTube, following a guided meditation practice? What is that difference between medical meditation and how that's provided to a client versus just someone who is practicing meditation a way that they've kind of identified self-identified meditation? I kind of want to start with that question first, and then kind of get into what do you think was that caused the tap dancing for him to be flat ball changing and shuffle ball step, all those things in the kitchen with that burst of energy that happened. But I want to start there first.
So Kundalini yoga and yoga in general have meditations. They have meditations where your hands will a lot of times be in one position. We call it a mudra. And you'll be chanting something. But then we have brain protocols. And this is where, when my father introduced the first meditation to me, and then this fell, I started to, what happened was, this is what happened. I got a stroke client, a physical therapist who was 32 years old, PhD, was going to be disabled the rest of her life, couldn't talk, couldn't walk. Her mom brought me to her because she could do clinical studies. See, a lot of my knowledge now is from all the doctors and scientists who showed me what they didn't get in education. And I would throw out as a mad scientist what worked and what didn't work. And it was healing me at the same time. See, my client that died, in some senses, saved my life. Because if I had not got that medical device, I really don't think, with all the brain damage I had, I'd be here, and I wouldn't look this young and this healthy. Okay, it's consistency. I'm a self-disciplined, consistent self-care person because I'm trained as a dancer. They're my best clients, athletes and dancers, because they know you got to do homework and you got to be consistent. Healing is not a quick fix, and it's never linear. It's messy and it's circular. As soon as you think you're better, sometimes another layer comes, because we're in a time period where we've come here to heal it and to not completely download it into our next generation over and over again. We've got to stop that. We've got to heal roots. And some of us have a lot of trauma in those roots. So with brain protocols, I specialize in what's called PTSD, OCD, childhood trauma, and ADHD. They're all have similarities to them in the sense that you're doing finger formulations, which if you think about playing the piano and how that stimulates certain parts of the brain, we're rewiring the brain. We're doing sound placements through universal sounds. And I'll give you an example in a minute. We're doing breath patterns. So we're not doing one thing. You know, a therapist that I talked to recently on a podcast put it better than I did. She said, you're actually putting tapping and sound therapy and music therapy, you're putting it all in one. And it takes an advanced student or a disciplined student, but they work fast. And they teach you more about yourself all in one. So that's where my theater arts comes in. If your chakras are blocked in chakra 1, 2, 3, which is your root, your legs, from childhood abuse, we're going to use lower notes. We're going to find a pitch that stimulates that, which is going to stimulate your hormones, your thyroid gland. So it's all interconnected. My theater arts comes into the brain protocols, which are amazing. And when I'm teaming up, and maybe down the road, we'll team up. If you've got a group of people online that want to do one of the brain protocols, we can team up and have a class, 8-week class down the road, you know, have them sign up and do that. But these are really important. And I wish they were being taught. And I think that's part of my mission is to teach them and to bring them forward, because they bring so much more information to somebody to be empowered to be their own healer. Because I don't want to tell people, I'm a psychic medium, but I don't want to tell people their past lives. I want them to know it. I want them to heal their own ancestral information, become telepathic the way they should be. Everybody is a healer. It's just that I'm an innate one from different past lives. So I came in here with severe abuse that would have killed people, to be able to bring these sciences to empower the public to get them upgraded. So, for example, you could be doing 4 different breath patterns for PTSD for one of the medical meditations to calm the nervous system. Or you could be doing a famous one, which is written in brain longevity books. I used it in Alzheimer's senior homes, is Sa-ta-na-ma. You're pressing pretty hard on each pressure point. You have to start with the pointer. So other brain protocols, there's different patterns to memorize. And these are pressure points for major organs. And then you're using your voice. So you take an inhale. This is breath technique. So all my clients learn breath technique. So they're chanting or singing properly so that the sound heals their own body, because your voice actually will heal your own body. But when it's blocked, like mine was for years, it's doing a little bit of that disruption, right? Yeah. So if I take a deep inhale, Sa-ta-na-ma. Inhale. Sa-ta-na-ma. So if you're in the audience, you can write that down and start doing it 11 minutes every day. It works on the frontal cortex of the brain. Very important for all of us, especially because Alzheimer's is growing in the 60s now, age 60s. This is a prevention. There's science to this. This is not, and also for childhood abuse. I had amnesia in my 20s. So you're running around with addictions and traumas a lot of people don't remember. And you don't have to have severe trauma. You could have been bullied on the playground or forgot about it, but it's still in your body. It affected your organs. A lot of times when people read my first book in 2018, and I didn't promote that went out just to the people that needed to find it to become my students so I could become a master in trauma. But, they would kind of downplay because I come from severe childhood abuse. My mom almost murdered me at age 8. She almost strangled me to death. That's pretty much a soul violation. You don't get much worse than that. And I say to them, soul violations or trauma is trauma. So we're not downplaying anybody's trauma here. You know what I mean? And a lot of people want to. And I think that's where I support them in saying we have to feel it. We have to cry it. We have to express it. We have to understand how it shifted you, how it made you have masks and personas, so we can become a healthy inner child. So the healthy inner child may have gifts that you're not even aware of, that you can really tap into.
Yes, I like that, the healthy inner child. And it takes time to be able to recognize the traumas, the triggers, and then it takes courage, confidence, and a safe space to be able to go ahead and start addressing it at the root. And I feel like I love it. Going back to what you said earlier, healing is messy. And it's not linear, and it does look different for everybody. And so I also want to say thank you for sharing the brain protocol exercise that you gave us just now. So y'all, if you're not tuned in to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast on YouTube, where we have the video version, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see the pressure points that she's providing if you're listening on your favorite podcast distribution platform right now. And if you are listening on your favorite podcast distribution platform, make sure you follow the show and leave a rating. So I want to get into this water, Heather-Ann, because I know you wrote the book. I want to first start off with, what do people misunderstand about the role of water and how it plays in our body beyond just hydration? And how is it really showing up in hormonal imbalances and even trauma expression?
We take water for granted in the United States. And I think from my own experiences of having a private practice for about 16 years, what I've found is 85-90% of my, I would say, sales, but also education has been received by women. There is a disconnect with men. And so if there's any men listening to this, I welcome understanding more about that. I'm frustrated with the male leaders in my state of PA for a lot of reasons, because there's an attitude of water's just water. And that's just simply not correct at this point. We have some very serious issues with the American water. I have a free ebook on my website, and I would suggest downloading it and reading it, and then doing research and asking questions. Because if there's one thing I'm about research and asking questions. I'm about empowerment. So I did not expect to see water do what it does. It comes from seeing experiences of people drinking a different type of water, and then waters. Because there's clean water, but most of my trauma clients would buy the Japanese medical device. And I say Japanese medical device because that system is in Japanese hospitals for over 65 years. I work with different Japanese. I have a biomat from Japan, my energy healings from Japan. Japan is a culture we should be studying. They're number one in healthcare, number one in longevity, and number one in wound care. If they're number one and we're kind of last, I think we need to surrender our egos a little bit and say, what are we missing? If their population is aging and they're moving and they're thin and they're mobile, their joints are mobile, they're flexible, and they're drinking this type of water, what's different about it? And that's science. And as much as I think people love science, I don't think they love science. I think people want quick fix. They want a system that does everything. They want a house system that cleans everything. And unfortunately, I'm going to disappoint you in saying, realistically, in America, and I'm specifically talking about America, even though I sell all over the world, because we have our issues with forever chemicals are not issues in other parts of the world.
And I was going to actually ask you to kind of tell us what are forever chemicals and how do they disrupt our nervous system, energy, and hormone production. But before you get to that, can you just give maybe 3 ways that you've seen trauma being expressed by water that is not necessarily at the best quality, based on what you've seen in some of your clients? Or what does that look like for women with imbalanced hormones or issues with their bodies?
Okay, so I've been blessed to have some Western doctors who left the system and are on my team. So I get input on blood work. Okay. So I can't really state that here, but when I do private Zoom lectures, we go into some details of that. So that's science. But what I will say out of observations, when women get on a more medical grade water with antioxidants and hydrogen and oxygen, it's alive water, it's living for 24 hours with healing properties that are tested, they are crying more, first off, which was a huge game changer for me because I didn't cry. I was bullied by my mother not to cry. So I think the only time I cried was when I met Jimmy Slide afterwards that night for hours, because there was a spiritual healing, a tap master. I had a healing with him. But besides that, I was pretty frozen and pretty cold. So the water was deconstructing emotions that were beyond blocked for me. But I would say for women, because when you start to work with women with breath and meditation, you start to see how tight their hips and pelvis are. Even when you're touching, if you go to touch them and they allow you to, they're very rigid there. And they're very rigid in the neck and shoulders with lack of blood flow, which can cause a lot of, migraines and blood flow, which also deals with the brain activity, but hormonal issues as well. So I would say crying. And one of the things that I also observe is everybody apologizes when they start crying more in sessions because they're not used to it. This was a main theme, and it made me start to realize, that's kind of sad that I'm holding space for these women to cry. Where are their families? Why are we not holding space for our family to cry through? Like, I had to cry on my own hours and hours. There was no family member that came and said, your mom hurt you, I'm so sorry, and hold me for out. And I was doing that for women, which is exhausting, by the way. It's an exhausting job to be a trauma coach. So if you are one, take care of yourself. Pay them well. We need to pay them much more, and they need to take care of themselves. So trauma coaches and trauma, even ERs, should not be working full-time because it is a full-time job part-time. You hold space in the proper way for that. I don't care how detached you are. It is taxing. And our families need to step up. What happens is victims get pushed out and they're not supported. I don't know why. We have a culture of that. And it needs
I agree with you, and I see that. I think the biggest thing for me, though, is that sometimes the family isn't the safe place, especially if the family is what's triggering the trauma. And so you might not necessarily, but I also understand, because you are a spiritual person, you don't technically mean your biological family. It's when you find a sense of family with someone, some group, some space.
Absolutely. But I also think we have to get to the root of the fact that our family, the family is the disease. Absolutely. Or the husband or the wife is the disease. But we've got to get to the roots of this so we can get a family structure again that's healthy. And maybe that's our young girls being trained as goddesses, loving their bodies and not just giving it to anybody, so that when they come into union, that we have higher conscious partnerships. So because we have to, our families are broken. You're absolutely right. And most of the times, that's the problem, is they are sticking with the families. They're the disease. They don't want in fact, I've had women get better and their kids thank me and their husbands hate me.
And I believe it, because they need that separation when they're realizing what the problem is, when they need to be able to heal. And I've had endometriosis conquerors come on and share their story, and they've even talked about having to separate or distance themselves from, like, a parent, a mom, just because they needed to prioritize their healing, understand their body, love themselves more. And I'm with you on the family structure and honoring and loving your body. Sometimes we get so caught up of love being external that we forget about the internal ways of how we show up for ourselves and how we care for ourselves, how we value ourselves, how we see ourselves. And I think that's a powerful place to be in. And it takes someone recognizing that for you and in you to be able to give you that space to have it. So I greatly appreciate you breaking it down, being able to cry more without apology, being able to notice where some of that energy is being stored in your body with the tight hips, and in the neck and the shoulder areas, and then how that could potentially lead to migraines. And again, your body remembers, even if you don't want to address it, or even if you don't even realize that it exists just far, because there is a lack of awareness before we can start doing the treating and the healing. But I kind of want to now get into those forever chemicals. What are they, and how do they really disrupt that nervous system, that energy, and that hormone production?
Well, I don't know if I'm the expert on that. I'd probably link it to our vice president in the clean water company. That there's 12,000 chemicals, but forever chemicals, one of the main ones is glyphosate. I'm not going to say the company of the weed killers.
Right. We don't definitely have to do that. But like some people like me, I never even heard about forever chemicals until you told me. And that's when you really telling me
It's like glyphosate's becoming a topic of soil and water now that people can research. But when you're spraying stuff on your lawn, that's chemicals. It's going into the water system. It's going into the food system, and it's destroying our animals. And now it's caught up with us, and it's not easy to remove it from water. And it takes a specific filter. And I'm happy to send anybody a video, just 6 minutes, of our water specialist showing where you can look for the testing of that. Because when you buy a filter, you should look on a third-party testing site to make sure that what they're saying actually takes out what they're saying, because they'll lie. So I follow a little bit a court system. There's a law firm in Vegas that's doing specific lawsuits on the plastic water bottle industry and water filters. And I follow the brands just for information for my own, but they're happening and they're succeeding. They're doing very well. What's disturbing is some of these billion-dollar companies still reopen. They just change their names, and but they don't really solve the issues. So the biggest thing that people need to be aware of, I think there's enough documentaries on plastic, but I reference one in my ebook to reference, is we have plastic in us, and that we don't want that to continue to grow. So you want to get a filter that really has all of the, and I would go on my ebook and I would just look up those numbers, go onto the site. It's pretty self-explanatory. The thing about the clean water filters is, how do I put this? Ours is actually one of the cheapest, and it's the best. And some of them are so expensive and they don't actually do much. And so I don't want to make people feel bad, because a lot of times people are investing in something and they don't know that the website's lying. They don't know to look to a third-party site to make sure that certification is accurate. And a lot of the things that a picture would do, or these basic filters, you think they're taking out stuff when they're just taking out the smell and odor. So you have to understand the numbers and the regulations. And I pull that all out in my ebook. I make it very simple. I give you links to look at, videos to watch, come back with questions. And if you find different research, send it to me, because I'm a research junkie and I'm always looking for it. But what I find is that people want easy. I try to make it easy in my ebook of this is what you want to do. But here's the challenge, and mothers have brought this up. You're raising kids. Life is stressful. You've got health issues. I just want one system. I want it down in the water heater. It does everything. I don't know that exists in America. So our water cleaner, the clean filter company, we do have a home system, but we can't put that in under the kitchen sink. because it doesn't take out the smaller particles that affect your drinking water. So a lot of times I save people a lot of money because they don't need, if you have a small town home like me, I don't have a whole system. I have the right filter on my shower, which is $90, but it's the best. And then I have one under my sink, and then there's stainless steel, and I replace the filters, and you'll be able to learn to replace the filters. And my thing is that even though there's a little bit of homework and you have to calendar in, like the company tells you when your subscription, you need to replace your filter every 6 months or every year, depending on your state and how bad it is when our children are 12 years old, they should learn these things right now until we fix. I would hope we eventually will fix the water in America, but we're not there yet. We're just not there. So when I go to the farmer's market this summer to get my apple cider and the apples, and they have a 10-year-old working the counter, that 10-year-old is self-sufficient, right? They know how to plant the food. They know how to run the register. They know how, they actually have better customer service than other places I go to. And they're 10 years old because they're working on a farm. When we spoil our children and we don't teach them how to use a wrench anymore, we don't teach them. You'd be surprised at how many mothers on my team are teaching people how to plug in this. We have to become knowledgeable about our homes or our apartments. I lived in an apartment for many years. How do you put this in your apartment over, under, we have one under and over. So it's really, Forever Chemicals. So it's the only one that I know of in this country that takes out those. And people are probably going to be very upset and say, no, mine doesn't. Okay, whatever. But what I do say is, if you email me what you have, I'll be happy to tell you. And a lot of times, if it's the popular ones, it's under a lawsuit and you don't even know it. And I go, do you understand? I pull out the lawsuit for you to read. And then you're like, oh, and it's like, they're not telling us this stuff. They're not. I don't know why the water issue has been slipped under the rug a lot in the United States. And I don't know. Well, I do know why, because I've seen a lot of great things happen with people's health when they change their water. Women lose weight fast. Women absorb their vitamins, all the money they're spending. I have a chemist, they have all these supplements. Well, if you're consuming a tap water that's got antibiotics and, arsenic levels that are higher than they should be, that's another thing we're finding, mothers are finding when they test their water, then how are you going to absorb? How are you going to absorb the money because I used to spend a ton and it wasn't absorbing. So that's a big thing. And then the other issue, because I know you're a big food person and I am too, but what are you washing your food under? So I stopped going to a lot of local restaurants, because if I'm eating a salad and it's been washed under tap water, I'm so clean because I detoxed for 4 years, and I mean a hard detox because I had trauma. So I'm talking a very conservative. I will pee out yellow, disgusting smells and chemicals the next day because I'm so clean, that I know that I just spent a lot of money on poison. And so and you can use a reverse osmosis for restaurants, but you can't drink that water on a regular basis. That's not really taking out the smaller particles again. So reverse osmosis was very popular in the United States. It's good for certain aspects, not drinking water, So it's just understanding. So some people will have a home system and I'll say, keep it, shower, but we got to unhook under the kitchen. And you got to get this and this to upgrade. Let's upgrade and save you money long term. And I like that you
said that, upgrade, because I feel like a lot of times when people hear something and it's new information, it's like, oh, now I need to uproot my whole house. Now I need, new cooking supplies. Now I need a whole new pantry. Now I need a whole new refrigerator. And I need a whole new wardrobe. And it's like you hear things in regards to the level of toxic exposure that you have going on from all the different things. And it sometimes can be overwhelming because it's like, okay, well, nothing's safe. Nothing at all is safe. How do I even navigate life? How do I even figure this out? And so I'm really glad that you talk about the best word I heard was upgrade. And it's like, now that you know this information, you can either upgrade your research, upgrade your knowledge, upgrade your intention on even looking at the brands in regards to what you're using. And so that was really powerful to me. Something that
I want to say too, like, it's not cheap to go to a trauma coach. You know, we want to see the results. We want to see the changes in blood work and this and that. But I also, you know, I come from blue collar. I come, you know, cost effective. I'm a minimalist. I'm a conservative. When people travel to my house, I practice what I preach. So it's also like, I will tell people the stages. I would do this first if you have this much money. If you don't, save up. Then you go to this. You know, when I first got, I've never shared this story. I'm going to share it right now. When I first got involved with the water, the woman who came to me as a private client, African-American woman, older woman, beautiful skin. I'm going to tell you what, she was beautiful. She wrote on the bottom of her liability form, the particular electrolytes reduced water. And then she gave me a gallon water. And I was like, what is this? And I had meditated, the water is bad. So I drank it. Well, I had been drinking plastic bottled water because I'm a very goal-oriented dancer. You know, I didn't like water. I forced myself to drink water. Most people don't like water because the body knows. People love this water. Even men do once it gets in the household. They just don't want to tell you. I know that for a fact. So I drank almost a gallon within an hour and was like, what's going on here? And so she brought another gallon, and then she brought another gallon. That's how she got me. I mean, I didn't have the money to buy this stuff. I was really poor, but I meditated. I actually prayed on it. I got yes. After like a day or two, once I got the system in, I was getting clients left and right because the universe. But we drove to Ohio about 2.5 hours away. This was years ago. And there was a movement happening in, I would say, the hood. There was a little house with this older couple, and they didn't live there. I guess it was a second house. And you walked in and there were all these containers on the porch. And honestly, I'm just going to be honest with you. There's these big black men with these jugs walking in, and you're like, they're going to get their water. And I was like, what is going on here? I mean, it's cool. She wanted me to see this movement because she knew I was a healer. And so we went in, and this older couple, it felt like the way I think church should be. They were basically teaching them all the science about electrolytes reduced water, which is the Japanese, the 7 waters, how you clean with 1 water, how you drink these, or there's different formulas. And I have an ebook for that. It's a little more complicated. Women love it. You have to watch a 2-hour, and then you can do, they would pick up the water because the healing properties die after 36 hours. They could do water pickups only if they signed up to learn how to earn money, I guess, for a part-time job online to raise the funds to get their own device, which is what you want to do. You want to empower people to have a goal, to get their own. And this was a whole underground health movement. And I'm sitting here going, oh my God, what's going on here? And then I started doing water pickups in my apartment. This is how I started. I let people, and I had great stories, just endless stories of that. That was, I mean, you have to have time to do that. I was at the age that I just could do that. But I never got it. I sold devices. I never got it in the lower income areas that I wanted to in Pittsburgh, which was really frustrating for me because I thought, what a great tool for the community, even at a library or a center where people could do water pickups, use grant money to do that. You know, there's different resources. This is why I was saying when we were offline, these very, popular influencers that have all this money in America, I have issues with you. Our water is bad. Can you help us fix this now? Not just keep digging. I mean, I want to help the other parts of the world, but maybe they can help themselves, probably a little bit more if we left them alone. Even though I have donated to water wells in Africa, you know what I mean? But still, but can we fix our water actually? And can we fund, single mothers to get device? Like there's other resources if water's so important. And why when I go to the airport, I only have toxic water to choose from? I did a trip last year. I bought one bottle of water and got sick to learn that it was on a recall for bacteria when I got home. Luckily, I could detox that. But people got high fevers. Some people are losing their lives. This is not like, but we just think it's not happening in America.
I love the movement that was happening in Ohio. Like I never heard that before. So I'm really glad you shared that. I'm really glad that you talked about how you used it, like even in your own space, because you have access. And I think that's a big thing. Once you have access, what do you do with the resource, knowing that you have a resource to give back when you know it's a tool and it could help? So I really love that part of the story, Heather-Ann. I think another thing that stood out to me was thinking about that quality of water. When you talked about the women were able to lose weight, they have more energy, they're able to detox, I think even before you were telling me that people with cancer was going into remission by utilizing this water source or this water system. And so I kind of want to ask you, what does that look like in regards to water fasting? And if someone were to, like, based on the water that they have access to right now, what does that water fast look like versus a water fast that if they upgraded, got the ebook, learned about the different things and just upgraded one aspect of their water system within their home, what would that do for their health?
It's a vary so extremely with water fasting that I really think that people need to have a health coach or somebody that's done it guide them. I'm going to be very honest with you, because you shouldn't do water fasting when you're menstruating, you're on your menstrual cycle. If you're a diabetic or have another disease, you have to have somebody, like, you cannot just jump into this. It can be very dangerous. What I will say the upgrade is, it's more in brain, mental focus. So when you do those brain meditations, they're very tiring when you have trauma and brain damage. So you need fuel, and your brain is mostly water. And so it really fuels it. And it allows people to be able to endure and have more mental clarity. So if you want to be more intuitive, if you talk in the spiritual world about the pineal and pituitary gland, well, things like that. And I think that's why with Reiki, people are so drawn to this type of quantum physics water, not just the clean water, but actually adding the electrolyzed reduced water. Clean water is amazing. And I think we start there. But if you want to upgrade with healthcare, then you get the Japanese device. I will say this, the Japanese device has more PubMed research on diabetes, which is what my father had before, and when he passed away. So I know a lot about that. What's interesting in Japan is, and I've seen videos of this, when you're a diabetic in Japan and you go in and you have a diabetic sore on your foot, they soak that in 2.5 electrolyzed reduced water while they start to create a homeostasis. So you start drinking 9.0, then 9.5. Now, people might think that's pH, potential hydrogen. It is, but it's more of like antioxidants, molecule structure, stem cell replication. That's what water's doing. That's why it's medically science water in Japan. Japan makes it in a medical facility. They don't license something to be a medical device. It takes about 14 years. So it's a very serious process. They hand make every device, and they're made very well. So it's not like people say, oh, I found one cheaper on blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not the same thing. And don't ever, if you have an ionizer or generator at home, you really want to have clean water to ionize the water. If your water is toxic, you're making the water worse with a generator ionizer. Now, people will disagree with me on that, and that's okay, but I stand behind that. That's why I'm with two different companies. They do two different jobs in water. So with diabetes, the diet in Japan, they balance it out. My dad, you get a diabetic sore, they want, we might have to cut off the foot. We'll cut off here, we'll cut off there, while they're feeding him sugar, bad sugar, not good sugar. So I can't even begin to talk about what we're doing here, but diabetes was really the first thing that caught my interest because of my father. And I understood his journey and the cost of being a diabetic, not just with your health as you age, but the cost of it, up and down with healthcare and your sugar levels. And I'm just shocked that more doctors aren't, and it's, I've saved so much money over the years. It's shocking because when you think about, I barely go to the grocery store. I buy one or two items in very farmer's market, but I look at what people buy and you see $7, $8, $9 for toxic water every week. And you add that up. I'll give you the numbers. You're going to save long term, and then you can use that money for your family for something else to add with it. I think our homes eventually need to be looked at as healing centers. And you start little by little empowering your family to understand that so that we pass this on to our children.
I love that. Your home should be a healing center where you are intentional with the upgrades, where you're first prioritizing you, honoring the root and the roots that you need to address. And I think that is very much so a place where that needs to be the priority when we're.
And I have to say this too, because I grew up with a construction company, my dad's business, builders and stuff. You don't have to have a big house to have an incredible house. Your house, you should walk in, it should be clean, energetically. You should take pride in it. It should have healing tools in it. You then are wealthy. The illusion of having a big house is deceptive. You overpay for things you don't need that are then toxic to you. Studies have been done that the happier family systems around the world live in small homes because they have to deal with each other. You have to deal with each other. You have to co-create in a tribe again and learn how to work together. We don't know how to do that. Sometimes we don't even see a family member now. They're glued to the cell phone, computer. The house is so big. I've been in them. I've been in $1 million houses and they're cold, and it's not a judgmental thing, but it's just like, we've been given by Hollywood pop stars that more you have, the more cars you have, the happier you. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true wealth. True wealth is clean water for your children to drink,
And not just for your children, but for you to drink too, because a lot of times you are giving off that energy, that love, that space. Like, you create so much from the things that you have created. And so like that, I wholeheartedly agree. And I love that you reminded people that you don't have to have a big house to have an incredible house, but knowing that your home is a healing center is just a potential shift of someone's thoughts or beliefs that are tuned in to this episode. So we're getting ready to do these vitality sparks, Heather-Ann. So you got to be quick, soulful, and empowering to these questions. All right, you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so here we go. One thing you believe every woman should add to her healing toolkit.
That's a tough one. One thing I think they should add to their toolkit is taking 10 minutes a day in silence, sitting under a tree or sitting in nature, nothing around you. 10 minutes in silence with yourself.
I love it. All right, here we go. The most misunderstood hormone.
I think the thyroid.
All right. Favorite healing ritual that costs $0.
Singing.
Not tap dancing. What do you wish you could whisper to every woman navigating grief or burnout?
You are enough.
If water could talk, what would it say to us?
That you were birthed in a womb with water, and that water is the foundation, the roots of Mother Earth. It's a water planet.
I love it. All right. So the last two questions, Heather-Ann, give some insight, some support, some wisdom for the girl dads, the father figures, the male role models, the partners and spouses, for those who are struggling currently right now with pelvic pain, hormonal imbalances, heavy periods, potentially infertility issues. Give some insights on how they could be brought into the healing space and be of support.
Well, I will say with fertility issues that the medical grade water has done some great things for women, even older women in their late 40s. I've seen that. So that's something to look into, and it's not, there's no side effects added to that. In regards to partners and people dealing with others who are dealing with chronic pain, I would say if you could put on a healing frequency when that's happening, like a Hertz 432, it will just start to calm both of you down, because it's a heavy energy, I understand, and it might just subtly help the energy in the space in the house for both parties.
I love that. I actually never have gotten that response. Hertz 432, putting that on to help not only them, but everyone around them and in the home. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you letting people know with fertility issues that the medical grade water system has been seen to work wonders for people in that area too. All right. So if you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you all eat?
Historical figure. Well, I've had some meetings with historical figures that are angelics, and that's coming out in my book series.
And guys, she's just thinking. Don't think.
I don't know if it's an historical figure.
You can find historical, Heather-Ann. Don't let that stop
Okay.
you. It's whoever you choose that you find. I mean, we're making history right now with this podcast episode. Like,
yeah, I would say there's two gentlemen that I would call divine masculine leaders, both Black Americans, who I would love to have a meal with. One is known as 19 Keys, and the other is known as Billy Carson.
Okay, come on, 19 Keys and Billy Carson. What are y'all eating at the table together, Heather-Ann?
We're eating pasta.
I'm with it.
I didn't think I would say that, huh?
I didn't know what you were going to say. I was just interested. I'm curious. That's one of my favorite questions. So I always want to know what you would actually eat. And I was going to think like, well, what kind of pasta? What's on it? But I was just like, nope, pasta is fine. Keep it simple. So I'm just like, okay, 19 Keys and this pasta. And it was who else?
Billy Carson.
And Billy Carson. I'm with it. All right, so let everybody know where they can find the ebook, how they can connect with you.
It's on my website at Heather-Ann-Ferri.com. On the first page, if you scroll down, you're going to see Water Matters. Basically, type in your email and it comes right up. Read it. I do a free consult. Message me questions, but do your homework. Please do your homework. It saves a lot of time because I do ask questions in that. That's my website. My email, youmatter108@gmail.com. If you've got private sessions, or if you're a wellness center that wants to do the brain protocols, things like that, it starts with a conversation.
Yes, ma'am. I love it. And y'all, I will definitely link the website in the show notes. So quick fixes aren't healing. And if they were, you wouldn't still be stuck in pain, battling fatigue, or wondering why nothing's changing. I know because I've been there, living with stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, pushing through pain and ignoring signals each and every day forced my body to tell me I need to stop. I need to do something different. And that's why I created the M to the 3rd degree healing empowerment formula, rooted in mindset, mindful eating, and movement. The exact steps I use to regulate my cycles, minimize my pain, and reclaim energy naturally. And I also want to help other women do the same. So if you're ready to stop guessing and start healing from the root, join me for my free training, The Empowered Reset. This is your chance to learn the exact method I use when my clients are ready to break the cycle of pain and fatigue. Check the show notes for those links and get registered. Y'all, it's been another amazing episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Jovonnie. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.